T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff.
Good morning and welcome. It's launch day for the SpaceX Crew capsule, which is going to the space station. Aha. Now, they all started broadcasting. Oh, now that camera's very angled up, isn't it? They started broadcasting hours ago. So we didn't start the broadcast then. So we're going to join it now. And then we'll jump back in. And then I did set the actual live broadcast to start at about 20 minutes before launch. So that's when we'll start having some conversations and stuff. But I thought, because I've been watching it since 6. Yeah, I know, because I'm sad like that. We'll put this on. And there's some great stuff going on. And it's quite interesting to watch. So we're going to just live stream the NASA and SpaceX stuff. And then I'll jump back in and out. And then at about 20 minutes before launch, so it's going to be about 10:15. What time is launch now? Where are we? I'm just trying to figure out the times. Bear with me a second. It's going to be 11:15 launch time is around there. So we will go. I'll come back on, and hopefully we'll have some guests on as well at around 10:20, half an hour before launch. Brilliant. Okay, right. So do you all know what's going on now? Because I don't. Anyway, let's join now the NASA and SpaceX broadcast, which is full of very interesting stuff. And they do call it Launch America, but it's fine if that's what they want to do. Anyway, we'll see you in a bit.
Long-duration exploration missions.
Deadlifts are awesome on Earth. They're also awesome in zero gravity.
We're testing technologies that will be critical to our return to the moon and Great Leap to Mars. Our research has contributed to medical and social benefits on our home planet, allowing us to find new ways to combat disease back on Earth and develop technologies to deliver clean water to remote communities in need. The spectacular vantage point of more than 200 miles above our planet supports our monitoring of Earth's climate, natural disasters, and plant life.
I can't begin to describe some of the sights that you get to see. It's just an incredible view of our planet that we have from here.
The growing new space economy, so vital to our continued progress in space, is flourishing in low Earth orbit. We're inspiring future generations from a platform that is one of the largest international collaborations of our time. We're doing science at 17,500 miles per hour. Come along for the ride.
Hi, I'm NASA astronaut Mike Hopkins aboard the International Space Station and a member of Expedition 64. Additionally, I have the honor of commanding Crew Dragon Resilience, which brought us here last fall. Since that time, my crewmates and I have been busy working on experiments and performing spacewalks to maintain this spectacular orbiting laboratory. It has been a privilege of a lifetime for the past 6 months as we continue to pave the way for exciting new exploration that will lead to American footprints on the moon once again in the near future. Victor, Shannon, Suichi, and I are getting ready to come home soon. But first, we're looking forward to welcoming the next SpaceX Dragon crew. Shane, Megan, Thomas, Aki, you are about to experience one of the most exciting rides of your lives and a very memorable 24 hours to document with ISS. We've loved our time here, but we're ready to pass the baton to you for the next commercial crew mission on Dragon. Godspeed.
All right, that was Colonel Mike Hopkins, commander of Crew Dragon Resilience. He's been up on the International Space Station since November of last year. He's had a chance to look down at the Earth and watch it breathe. Now, what does that mean? Well, luckily, we have a climate scientist here from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory to tell us everything about it, Dr. Anne-Marie Eldring. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me here. So yeah, what do we mean by watching the Earth breathe? So carbon dioxide in our Earth's atmosphere, you probably know it's going up as we burn coal, oil, gas, but it has this big seasonal cycle. So plants are really important for carbon dioxide. When they spring, they take it out of the atmosphere. And there's so many plants in the land of the Northern Hemisphere. Northern spring reduces the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. In the fall and the winter, those leaves are falling off, decomposing, it goes back in and out of carbon dioxide from plant activity every year.
All right, so why is the International Space Station a good place to monitor all of that?
The International Space Station was actually really well designed for us to do science on it. And two features we love. One is the way it orbits around the Earth, it passes overhead at different times of day. For like LA, you'll see it change during the week. And that's really interesting with plants and these other things that respond to sunlight. You want to see them at different times of day. You can sort of learn about that part of the change.
So the OCO-3, Orbit Carbon Observatory 3, has been up on the International Space Station since 2019. It launched on SpaceX Dragon. What have you seen so far? What sorts of data have you seen coming in?
We've been really having a great time making measurements. I brought my little plastic model of what we have loaded up there. And one of the things on the bottom, it has this pointing system, and we can look everywhere very quickly. So I brought a graphic along that's a measurement over Los Angeles. We looked at carbon dioxide. In just 2 minutes, we mapped the city, and you can see how there's extra carbon dioxide over the heart of LA as compared to the outer reaches. So we can start to see city scale variation in carbon dioxide and learn more about our own human emissions than we've ever seen before.
Now, that's some great data, right? But this is not the only remote sensing tool that's on the International Space Station. What else is up there?
It's like a party up there. We've got, especially when you're thinking about plants, we have a neighbor called JEDI. It's looking at how much plant material is there. There's another neighbor called EcoStress. It says what happens to plants when they're hot and dried out. And then this other instrument from the German Space Agency, DESIS, that's figuring out what types of plants are in different places. So when you get all those measurements from the ISS, same time, same place, really powerful for science.
All right, Anne-Marie Eldring, thank you so much for joining us.
Really glad to be
Project
here.
Scientist for Orbiting Carbon Observatory 3. We have a lot more of climate science information that you can find on our website. That's nasa.gov/Earth Day. Now let's get back to the action with Crew-2 with John Innsbrucker here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. John?
That's right, Gary, just upstairs from where you are down on the floor. We're coming up on just over 100 minutes before launch. The Falcon 9 launch team began their final activities at T-minus 2 hours. Now, the launch engineers are located in Firing Room 4 in the NASA Launch Control Center on Kennedy Space Center. They've got a view through their large windows of Pad 39A, located just 5 kilometers east of where they're sitting. Now, the Falcon 9 team is loading helium and nitrogen gas into storage bottles on the launch vehicle. Radio frequency checkouts have also been completed, and a final review of launch vehicle testing performed earlier today is underway. Now, the SpaceX chief engineer will check with the team at T-minus 80 minutes to verify we are good to continue the countdown. Now, the next major activity is going to be flowing a small amount of fuel onto the first stage to prime the Merlin 1D engines for ignition. The team is also monitoring fuel and liquid oxygen loading preparations. We're ensuring that the propellants in the ground tanks are correctly chilled prior to loading onto the Falcon at T-minus 35 minutes. Now the view you've got here, the Dragon capsule at the end of the crew access arm. Well, the crew's been busy this early morning. We've got all 4 of the astronauts are in the capsule. The hatch is closed. The comm checks with the SpaceX launch team are complete, both with the Dragon flight crew as well as the Falcon 9 launch crew. We've also done a leak check, and that confirmed the hatch is correctly installed. It was completed with no leaks. Now, at about T-minus 1 hour, the support team will be clear of the crew access arm and the pad. And actually, right now, we're running well ahead of schedule. So they're beginning to button things up, and so they may actually leave the launch pad area a little bit early. Now the range will begin their final sweeps of the flight hazard and caution areas. And for the weather, the good news right now is that everything continues to look good. The weather possibility of bad weather is only 5% right now. What we're mostly looking at is in case a cloud with some rain in it pops up along the flight trajectory, but that doesn't look to be a big issue right now. We are waiting at T-minus 1 hour for some last weather data that'll tell us the Dragon weather conditions if they are go for launch in the case of an abort. We need to make sure that it's not too windy. If Dragon had to do an escape maneuver from the Falcon 9, we don't want the winds to be too high as they come down into the ocean. But right now, everything looks good, both at the launch pad as well as the downrange and contingency landing locations looking good weather-wise. So right now, everything's looking go at T-minus 1 hour, 37 minutes, 28 seconds. And Jasmine, back to you in Florida.
Thanks, John. This mission is demonstrating our partnerships across the country and around the globe. Joining me now is Hiroshi Sasaki, Vice President of JAXA and Director General of the Human Spaceflight Technology Directorate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course. So Crew-2 will be the second commercial crew mission to include a JAXA astronaut. Can you tell us what the commercial crew program means to JAXA?
Yeah, commercial crew program is very important for also us that our Japanese astronauts on board. And Aki, as well as the Japanese folks, is so excited that Japanese astronauts Soichi and Aki will meet each other in space stations. And it is a symbol of the Japanese astronauts are active in space. And it inspires and gives hopes to the Japanese young people.
Right, absolutely. So I'm glad that you mentioned that Aki Hiko Hoshide will be joining Soichi Noguchi on board, and this will be the first time that there is a direct crew handover with two JAXA astronauts. Can you tell us how that's inspiring the next generation of JAXA astronauts?
Yeah, now we are selecting the new astronaut for not only the ISS, but also moon missions. And these activities very inspires people to want to go to the space and even the moon, I think.
Right, absolutely. There's a lot of inspiration, of course, coming from the two of them. And like Soichi, Aki has had a lot of experience. He's flown on Shuttle, Soyuz, and soon a Crew Dragon, which is very exciting. Can you tell us what unique skills he is bringing to Crew-2?
Yeah, he has lots of experience, and I think that he is very relaxed to the launch. So maybe he will lead the other astronauts to the relax and good mind. I think so.
Yeah, no, that's good. We're glad that he's relaxed today, that he's ready to go. We're all ready to watch him and cheer him on. So can you tell us what is next for JAXA and the commercial crew program?
Yeah, the next we already assigned Wakata, very famous astronaut, and also Furukawa, his second flight. And we want to send a Japanese astronaut every year.
That's fantastic. We're looking forward to that cadence of JAXA astronauts going to the space station. And you also mentioned the moon, inspiring people to go back to the moon. So last year, JAXA signed the Artemis Accords, which is speaking to our continued partnership in space. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, Japan is signed not only the Artemis program, but also the Gateway MOU. And we want to contribute using our expertise, such as ecosystem or transportations, and even astronaut.
Right.
And we want to go together to the moon with international partners.
Exactly. No, it's all about partnership. It's all about going together. Is there anything that you can tell us that Aki will be working on station? Any specific science that he'll be doing?
Yeah, he will conduct lots of science research and technology demonstrate, such as protein crystal growth for the medicine design, contributing the people on the ground, and a demonstration was enhanced water recovery system for the future explorations.
Right, right. That's fantastic. We know that he's going to be doing great work, and I'm sure that you are excited to see today's launch. Can you tell us where you'll be watching from later on today?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the beautiful launch.
Fantastic, wonderful. Hiroshi Sasaki, thank you so much for joining us today. We are honored to have you here. And now we're going to take it back to Marie at the KSC host desk.
All right, thank you, Jasmine. We are currently at T-minus 1 hour, 32 minutes and counting until Crew Dragon flies its next 4-person crew to the International Space Station with the astronauts you see live inside the Crew Dragon Endeavour spacecraft. Commander Shane Kimbrough, pilot Megan MacArthur, and mission specialists Thomas Pesquet and Aki Hoshide.
At this point in time, we expect the closeout team to be given the go to leave the BDA, the blast danger area. We're waiting to hear that call out. They're just doing final inspections. So all good news, proceeding to an on-time liftoff this afternoon. The milestone that will be coming up after that will be the launch escape system checks, or LES checks. That will happen around T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes, and those will be conducted by the Falcon launch team. Those checkouts are a standard part of the launch countdown and critical to make sure that everything is in working order before arming the launch escape system, and which, of course, there we see the closeout team leaving the Dragon capsule, walking down the crew access arm.
So the closeout team has begun.
Dragon SpaceX closeout team has departed the crew arm. Copy, thanks.
We just heard confirmation that the pad closeout team has departed the crew access arm.
As I was saying, the milestone that will be coming up next is commencement of the launch escape system checks, and we're expecting that to begin any moment now. As I was saying, these are standard part of the launch countdown, critical to make sure that everything is in working order before we arm the launch escape system, which of course comes right before we step into propellant loading.
And that launch escape system is what basically arms the Crew Dragon capsule to be able to propel itself off of the Falcon 9 rocket in the event of an emergency. And so that is a critical step that has to be taken before the arming of that system that happens just before fueling on the rocket begins at T-minus 35 minutes.
Once again, seated in the seat that is closest to what we can actually see on the camera is Commander Shane Kimbrough. To his right is pilot Megan MacArthur. To her right is Thomas Pesquet. And then seated underneath the camera, so unfortunately we can't see him, is Aki Hoshide. This crew has certainly been having a good time while they're sitting in their seats. There's not a whole lot for them to do at this particular time. We see some smiles there on our commander, so it sounds like everything is fun inside the capsule. Tracy, you mentioned earlier that this crew is just at, you know, the epitome of working together and just having these amazing personalities, and I can only imagine what it might be like to be, of course, no flies in Crew Dragon. That's foreign object debris, that's fun, but to be a fly on the wall and kind of peek in on these interactions. It must be so fascinating.
Yeah, if I had to guess, even though we can't see Aki, we know he's smiling, right? He's the one probably making them all laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys have worked together. We've all worked together well before being assigned to crew together, and these four have intertwined in a number of ways. As you know, Shane and Thomas flew in space together on their expedition. Aki credits Megan with teaching him how to Capcom, and this is how you Capcom, Aki. And he told me that he gave me credit for giving him the opportunity to first make a Quindar, which is the ping that you hear when you have keyed the mic in mission control to space to ground or air to ground, or in this case, Dragon to ground. And I'll take it. You know, whatever contribution I made to his fabulous career, I'm very honored. But yeah, this crew is top-notch people at heart, as well as technically sound and brilliant in all that they've done. So I can only imagine them being concentrated together in a capsule. There's just too much goodness. The rest of us probably just wouldn't be able to fit in there. So it's great.
And there's a look outside at the launch pad, looking at the crew access arm extended out, still connected at this point to the Crew Dragon Endeavour. That will retract from the capsule as we get closer to launch around the T-minus 42-minute mark. So again, we've just been standing by to listen to the launch escape system health checks. We expected to hear that about T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes, but we haven't heard it just yet. Let's take a social question while we're standing by for that. All right, how come some launches take longer to get to the space station than others? Tracy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. It mainly, again, has to do with our orbital mechanics and, you know, the station, the capsule, when it launches, is constantly chasing the space station. But it has a lot to do with phasing, we call it, but that's really just the distance you are to the space station and how far below it you are, and you're catching up to it. And we call it a profile, but it's basically the path that the capsule takes to get to the station. And each milestone of that is a engine firing that takes it closer to the station, either in altitude or in proximity. And how that's designed plays a big role in how long it takes to get there. Plus, engines performance and propellant and a number of factors can go into that make it anywhere from 2 days to 2 hours. And so it's quite a range of time to get there.
And it just so happens that this flight, after it lifts off at 5:49 and 2 seconds this morning, we expect they will be docking to the International Space Station in less than 24 hours, a little after 5 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturday morning. I think we have time for another social question. What improvement over Crew-1 does this mission have in terms of Crew Dragon itself? Also, will rendezvous with ISS be quicker this time or take the 27 hours like previous missions? I think we just answered the last part of that question, but Kate, do you want to take the first part?
For sure. Yeah, we've definitely made a number of upgrades to Crew Dragon. Like I said before, this is a refurbished Dragon. This is the first time that we are utilizing a flight-proven Dragon on a crew mission. We installed some components on the Super Draco system, which is actually, if needed, which of course, never something we expect to use, but the launch escape system, as we mentioned before, is an important safety feature. And the components that we added to that propulsion system, it gives us over a 10% improvement on performance for a pad abort scenario, which in that case doubles, and in this situation, doubling is a good thing. It actually doubles our envelope for the wind limits at launch time. So when there are so many things going into consideration for a launch, like downrange weather, which is why we waved off from yesterday, to launch weather here specifically at the site, it's a great improvement to be able to have twice as much capability there in that range. We've also improved some inside things. We've taken, of course, feedback from our astronauts that have flown on board already and have taken their feedback and made some more efficiency or operational improvements to things even as simple as where certain personal items need to be packed inside Crew Dragon for retrieval while on orbit.
And I think we have time for one more social question. Are the Crew-2 astronauts going to do any experiments that are related to Artemis missions? Yes, absolutely. In fact, many of the experiments on station are directly related to Artemis. There's a live shot of the moon that we're looking at, by the way. And that is where we're going with the Artemis mission. We are set on putting the first woman and the first person of color on the moon as part of the Artemis mission. And the experiments that the astronauts do on the space station help us learn about how life in microgravity affects the human body. And of course, that helps us develop the technologies that we need to keep astronauts healthy for those longer deep space missions that are required to go to the moon and eventually onto Mars. And one in particular that Aki has mentioned is working on recycling water in space and also ways to counteract bone and muscle loss from extended time in space. I mean, those are just a couple of examples, but there are so many more. Also wanted to let folks know that we actually we have completed the launch escape system health checks. We didn't acknowledge them because they happened so far ahead of schedule. We were expecting them at T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes. They, in fact, happened more than 30 minutes ago. So just want to let folks know that we did have those already happen and they were successful. This is, of course, the third crew to fly to orbit in a commercial spacecraft. Of course, the first were astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken nearly a year ago, and the last crew that launched in November is still in orbit right now. They are getting ready to return to Earth on April 28th after they welcome the Crew-2 astronauts aboard the space station. Here's a look at some of the extraordinary and record-setting accomplishments of the Crew-1 team to date.
You know, it feels great to be a part of this transition from a test program, a demonstration program, to an operational program.
After NASA certified Crew Dragon, Crew-1 is the first mission to the International Space Station. I feel very honored to be a part of this great mission.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
When we're sitting on the launch pad, I think what's going to be going through my mind is I want to be in the moment and enjoy the experience.
There is just an electricity in the air as that countdown is happening. The engines light and liftoff occurs.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff.
Vehicles pitching downrange. Falcon 9 is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed.
Dragon separation confirmed. Dragon, SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
It's really hard to explain living and working in zero-G. It's fascinating how normal it becomes so quickly. It just feels like you've done it your whole life.
We are on the cusp of the third crewed launch for the Commercial Crew program, signifying a regular cadence of human spaceflight launches from right here at Kennedy Space Center. Joining me now is Center Director Bob Cabana. Thank you so much for being here today with us.
Absolutely, my pleasure, Jasmine. What an awesome morning.
Right. We're up before the sun.
Yep.
Yeah, we are so glad to have you here. What's your reaction to this return to regular human spaceflight launches?
All I can say is it's about time. It was so great last May when Bob and Doug launched for the first time in 9 years, humans to space on a U.S. rocket from U.S. soil here at the Kennedy Space Center. Then to get Crew-1 up there last November. And now this is really cool because Megan's flying in the same capsule that Bob, her husband, went to space in last May. I mean, it's awesome to have this regular cadence again.
Yeah, absolutely. We're thrilled to be here. We're thrilled to see, history being made. And in addition to the excitement from today's launch, we are also coming off our celebration of Earth Day. Can you talk to us about how we launch from Earth for Earth? What is Kennedy Space Center doing to benefit our home planet?
Kennedy Space Center has an absolutely excellent environmental program. First off, our 144,000 acres here, it's a national wildlife refuge managed for us by the Fish and Wildlife Service. I've been out and seen the sea turtles. I've helped count eggs, look at eggs, see the nest. It's awesome. It is so cool. We just signed an agreement with Florida Power and Light. They have put in a 491-acre solar farm. It takes care of like 15,000 homes, the electricity that this solar farm generates. We want to be very ecologically friendly. One of the neat things that we're doing here at Kennedy Space Center, we're responsible for plants, growing plants in space, growing plants when we go to the moon, going to Mars, food for the astronauts. Real processed food loses nutrition over time. And there's a psychological benefit to having plants in space, too. So I think it's kind of cool to be able to take, part of planet Earth with us into space as we move on. But no, I'm really proud of our environmental program here at KSC.
Right, absolutely. And you really understand the importance of taking pieces of home up to the space station. You have flown 4 times on shuttle. You understand probably more than most of us how our astronauts are feeling today. So have you spoken to them recently? How are they doing?
The crew is doing outstanding. I talked to them the other night. They are ready to go. Everything's tracking well on the launch. I can't wait to see those guys blast off. I got to see them come out of crew quarters and get in their Teslas and drive out to the pad. They're all looking great. Their families are great. But, I know they're really focused right now. This is once you strap into that spaceship, you're just thinking about doing everything right, making sure that you do your job to get safely to space.
Right. No, and you have seen, how this spaceport has changed over time. You were recently recognized as the longest serving center director, so congratulations on that. Can you talk to us about how it's evolved over time?
Absolutely. The shuttle paid for everything at the Kennedy Space Center. And of course, that program came to an end in July of 2011. We had about 15,000 contractors and civil servants working here at the end of the shuttle program. When Atlantis landed on a Thursday in July, on Friday, 2,000 contractors got pink slips and walked out the door. We went from a workforce of 15,000 down to 7,500. Then we took a look at, hey, what do we need to support the future? And the future was SLS and Orion, but it was also enabling commercial operations. And we got a lot of stuff off our books that we had no need for, that didn't support commercial operations or the SLS Orion Artemis program. And then what was left, we said, hey, how can we enable commercial operations with this? We went out for notices of availability on this extra facilities that we had. And look at us today. We've got Boeing and SpaceX. Boeing's building the CST-100 Starliner in a facility right over here. The Air Force X-37 orbital test vehicles operating out of these former shuttle facilities over here. We got SpaceX out on pad 39A, where we went to the moon and launched shuttles. A 20-year use agreement to utilize that pad, launching cargo and crews to the International Space Station, as well as their commercial missions. Space Florida is operating what used to be the shuttle landing facility now and commercializing it. We've got Exploration Park, a research and development park on NASA property outside the secure perimeter. Space Florida operates that. We got Blue Origin out there. We got more companies coming in. I mean, this is an exciting time for America's space program.
Right. No, absolutely. There's a bright future right here at Kennedy Space Center. Director Bob Cabana, thank you so much for being here with us today. Now we're going to take it back to Jesse and Hawthorne for a launch update.
I have it in my script, if that helps.
Thanks, Jasmine. We're just T-minus 1 hour and 14 minutes from launch, and we're getting pretty excited over here. Since arriving at the spacecraft, the crew were helped by our closeout engineers to get into their seats, attach their suits to special umbilicals that provide breathing air and a communication link to Dragon's systems. They conducted suit leak checks, which were successful, and communications checks with the core here in Hawthorne, which is the person who will speak to them directly throughout the mission, as well as the launch director in Florida. This is where they're checking their comm path through both ground stations and data tracking and data relay satellites that we'll use to talk to the crew the entire way to the station.
And after those suit leak checks, the closeout team was able to seal the hatch, which also gets its own leak check. The closeout team has departed the pad, and weather operators will kick off their final check on wind speeds at the pad, which will be used during the final go, no-go for launch. Now, before we get to that final go, no-go, the various teams at both NASA and SpaceX will do an internal go poll, making sure conditions are right with the Falcon 9, the Dragon, the crew, the range, and the space station before that final go is given. Let's check back in on Houston for a status on the team supporting the space station on their readiness for launch. Courtney.
Thanks, Gary. The team here in Mission Control Houston remains go for launch. All systems on board the station that are required to be healthy for this mission are continuing to look good. Before the station team is go for launch, they must verify that key systems on board the station are functioning as expected. This includes life support systems like oxygen generation, carbon dioxide removal, and the water recycling system that allows us to reuse about 90% of the water we send to station. We're also ensuring that the computers that allow us to command the station's major subsystems, essentially the station's nervous system, are functioning normally. We also work with our Russian counterparts to ensure that both methods of controlling the station's attitude are fully functional. This includes the large U.S. gyroscopes and the thrusters found on the Russian segment. Both systems play a critical role during Dragon's docking. Mission Control Houston will be closely monitoring the crew's flight and checking off milestones for most of the journey. Again, Flight Director Paul Kanya is now on console, leading flight controllers here in Houston for launch, and Flight Director Scott Stover will lead teams for docking tomorrow, expected to take place at 4:10 a.m. Central Time. The International Space Station team is ready for launch, so I'll send it back to Hawthorne. Gary?
All right, thank you, Courtney. As we mentioned, the Crew-2 astronauts will spend about 6 months on the International Space Station. During this time, the Crew-1 astronauts will depart the station and return to Earth. They're set to undock from the station in the Crew Dragon Resilience on April 28th and splash down off the coast of Florida, where they'll be picked up at sea by one of SpaceX's recovery vessels. Next, SpaceX will launch Commercial Resupply Mission 22, or CRS-22, to the space station to deliver cargo and supplies to Crew-2 and the astronauts and cosmonauts aboard. It will automatically dock to IDA-3 at the Zenith port of the Harmony module.
Before Crew-2 returns home, they will hand the baton to the next crew to arrive at the orbiting lab on Crew Dragon, the Crew-3 crew. That mission is targeted to launch this fall. It will carry Crew Dragon Commander Raja Chari, pilot Tom Marshburn, whom are both of NASA, mission specialist Matthias Maurer of the European Space Agency, as well as a fourth crew member who will be added soon. The Crew-3 astronauts will also complete a 6-month mission as expedition crew members aboard the space station. They will be joined there by 3 additional crewmates who will launch on a Russian Soyuz spacecraft. This will mean that 7 people will be on the space station at one time, allowing NASA to effectively double the amount of science conducted in space.
This will be Chari's first trip to space, but he has more than 2,500 hours of flight time as a test pilot. The U.S. Air Force colonel is also a member of NASA's Artemis team and is eligible for assignment to a future mission to the moon. Crew-3 will be Marshburn's 3rd visit to the space station and his 2nd long-duration mission. He flew on STS-127 and Expeditions 34 and 35. Marshburn is also a medical doctor who once served as a flight surgeon and medical operations lead for the space station. Like Chari, Maurer will be making his first trip to space with the Crew-3 mission. He has extensive experience in engineering and research, and he spent 16 consecutive days in an underwater laboratory as part of NASA's Extreme Environment Mission operations. Now let's head back over to Marie at Kennedy Space Center. How's it going over there, Marie?
Thanks, Gary. Things looking good here in Florida. If you are just now joining us, Welcome to coverage for the mission known as Crew-2, NASA and SpaceX's third flight with crew to the International Space Station. We are at T-minus 1 hour, 9 minutes and counting until liftoff. Myself and Kate Tice and Tracy Caldwell-Dyson here have all been vaccinated against COVID-19, and that's why you see us here sitting together without masks on. Liftoff is still holding for 5:49 and 2 seconds Eastern Time, and we're tracking no issues at the moment with Falcon 9 or Dragon. The range is green, and weather is looking good. Over the last 3 hours, our crew of Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Thomas Pesquet, and Aki Hoshide donned their SpaceX suits in the historic crew quarters suit-up room. They walked out of the crew quarters building just as every astronaut to fly from this spaceport has done since Apollo 7. And then they were transported to the pad where they climbed inside the SpaceX Crew-Dragon Endeavour, which we are watching live on your screen.
While this is SpaceX's third time flying astronauts in Crew Dragon, it will be the first time a European astronaut will fly aboard Dragon. If you remember back in November, we launched NASA astronauts Mike Hopkins, Victor Glover, Shannon Walker, and JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi to the International Space Station, and those 4 are nearing the end of their 6-month science mission. They are scheduled to return home to Earth just a few days after the Crew-2 astronauts arrive on station. Over the next hour, we will conduct a series of polls to get ready for launch, have the crew arm the launch escape system, and begin fueling Falcon 9. Launch is set for 5:49 a.m. Eastern Time. This will include a 12-minute flight to orbit and then a 23.5-hour flight to dock with the International Space Station tomorrow at approximately 5:10 a.m. Eastern Time. So we're approaching T-minus 1 hour till launch. Tracy, what is going through the astronauts' head right now as they're seated in their capsule and they're ready to go? They still have another 60 minutes to go. Can you give us any insight into what they may be experiencing right now?
Well, normally I would say, building off of experience, that inside an hour, it seems like eternity before those engines light. You're in there chatting it up with your crewmates, but watching these guys, they're having a little party in there. Hand signals are flying. I understand they're playing a game that we thought was rock, paper, scissors. I'm learning from friends that it's actually a game that Thomas knew when he was a kid and has shared it with his crewmates. And so I guess there's no better way to bond than through childhood memories and that are being recreated in the capsule right now. But all kidding aside, these guys are probably glancing back and forth at their monitors, like you see there, and just checking systems, making sure that they're keeping track of what's going on with the vehicle, listening to the sights and sounds, maybe a little bit of chit-chat, but inside an hour they're listening up for what might be coming in through their ear from the teams on the ground.
Sure. Today's flight is the second of 6 planned rotational missions NASA has contracted already with SpaceX as part of the agency's Commercial Crew program. The success of the Demo 2 test flight last year allowed NASA to complete certification for SpaceX to fly astronauts like these regularly to and from the International Space Station, and that paved the way for the Crew-1 launch last fall. Now this next crew is getting ready to lift off in the exact same capsule named Endeavour that Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley first flew in almost 1 year ago.
We've been hearing from the crew on board Dragon. Like you can see there, they're currently strapped into their seats and they've already gone through all of their communication and suit leak checks. They're able to follow all the milestones that they still have ahead of them on the displays there just above them, which allow them to gain insight into all of the Dragon and Falcon 9 systems as we continue to proceed towards launch. So right now, as we're coming up to the T-minus 1 hour and 5 minute mark, let's check in with Hawthorne for a status on both vehicles. John, what updates do you have for us now?
Okay, we've had, as you've been saying, a smooth countdown. The SpaceX team is working no issues and the pace is beginning to pick up. In the Falcon 9, final propulsion checkouts of the first and second stages in the engines began just a few minutes ago in preparation for propellant loading. Now at T-minus 45 minutes, The team will report their readiness with a final electronic go-no-go poll. At T-minus 35 minutes, Falcon 9 propellant loading will begin. The Dragon spacecraft you can see right here on the monitor with the crew access arm next to it. Earlier today, the Dragon operators performed a series of checkouts of the Dragon flight systems, and the spacecraft is also currently go for launch. The 4 astronauts are currently inside Dragon and the hatch is closed. The SpaceX closeout team has left the pad and they'll be outside of the blast danger area very shortly. Now, before we can start loading propellant on the Falcon 9, we've got 2 major items to perform. First, we need to retract that crew access arm away from the Dragon capsule to its launch position. Now, that'll happen between T-minus 44 and T-minus 42 minutes. Now, we move the access arm away to obviously clear the way for launch, but we also do it in case the Dragon capsule has to leave the launch pad in the event of an emergency before launch. Now, once the arm is out of the way, the launch escape system will be armed. With these 2 events complete, Dragon will be ready for Falcon propellant loading. Now, the range is currently clear for launch from historic Pad 39A. The worldwide network of ground stations and the tracking and data relay satellites are ready to support Dragon as it heads into orbit. On the weather front, weather continues to look good, both at the surface level, the upper altitudes. We are continuing to wait for a final input from the weather team coming up in about 5 minutes on ground level winds in case we had a Dragon abort somewhere near the launch pad. Right now, those conditions are go, but we're getting 1 more set of balloon data to make sure that everything is good. Now, today, we have an instantaneous launch window at 5:49:02 Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or just after 49 minutes past this hour. Now, once we begin loading propellant, there's no opportunity to change the T0. We are committed. We're going to get 1 chance at it today. But the good news, Jesse, at T-minus 62 minutes and counting, we are go for launch.
Thanks, John. It's good to hear that we are still go. Today's launch marks the 2nd time a rotational crew will fly on a commercial spacecraft, and each of our crew members brings a diverse set of experiences to today's flight. Crew Dragon Commander Shane Kimbrough will be making his 3rd trip to space. He was born in Killeen, Texas, and raised in Atlanta, and was selected as an astronaut in 2004. Kimbrough is a retired U.S. Army colonel and holds degrees in aerospace engineering and operations research. He first launched aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour on STS-126, then aboard a Russian Soyuz spacecraft for Expedition 49 and 50. Kimbrough has spent a total of 189 days in space and has performed 6 spacewalks.
Pilot Megan MacArthur will be making her 2nd trip to space, but her first one to the space station. She was born in Honolulu, but considers California her home state. She holds degrees in aerospace engineering and oceanography, and was selected as a NASA astronaut in 2000. MacArthur served as a mission specialist aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-125, the final servicing mission of the Hubble Space Telescope in 2009. She operated the shuttle's robotic arm over the course of 12 days and 21 hours, capturing the telescope and maneuvering crew members throughout the 5 spacewalks to upgrade Hubble's science instruments, along with removal and replacement of other components to lengthen the telescope's life. Hubble continues to operate to this day, providing scientists the opportunity to make more and more deep space discoveries.
Mission specialist Aki Hoshide has suited up for his 3rd space flight today. Born in Tokyo, Hoshide was selected as an astronaut in 1999 by the National Space Development Agency of Japan, known today as JAXA. Hoshide earned his degrees in aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering. He flew on STS-124 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery to deliver and install Japan's science laboratory, Kibo. He also flew aboard the Russian Soyuz on Expeditions 32 and 33 for a 124-day visit to the space station.
Things continue to progress nominally. Next up is cycling the orbit tank isolation valves to equalize low flow pressure here in about 15 seconds.
Copy. We'll be listening.
Got some good call-outs there. In 2014, he also served as commander of the 18th NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operation, which was an underwater expedition at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Aquarius habitat off of Florida's Key Largo coast.
Mission specialist Thomas Pesquet will be making his second trip to space. Born in Rouen, France, Pesquet was selected by ESA as an astronaut in 2009. He has a degree in spacecraft design and control and more than 2,300 flight hours as a commercial airline pilot. Pesquet first flew to space on the Soyuz as a flight engineer for expeditions 50 and 51. In that time, he worked on more than 50 experiments and performed 2 spacewalks to maintain the space station. He's logged 197 days in space. Pesquet will be the first European to fly in Crew Dragon, and it will be the first time a European has launched from America in more than a decade.
Each of these 4 crew members will join Expedition 65 once they arrive at the International Space Station, with Aki Hoshide taking over as commander of the station right before Crew 1 departs.
All right, we're inside 59 minutes from launch. The day is a continuation of regular crew flights to space station from U.S. soil. This will be the 3rd Crew Dragon flight with crew and its 2nd long-duration mission to the International Space Station.
The
Dragon
astronauts...
SpaceX, you are go for Section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
Copy, Section 6, in work.
The astronauts are also flying on the Crew Dragon Endeavour, which is the same capsule that launched Bob Bacon and Doug Hurley last year. And today, Bob's wife, Megan, is the pilot on this flight, sitting in the same seat that he did. It's been an awesome countdown so far. Weather is still looking good, and the excitement is picking up as we get closer and closer to that T0.
That's right, Jesse. We had a great countdown today, starting with suit up just over 3 hours ago. The SpaceX team helped the crew put on their suits and conduct initial checkouts before crew walkout. Crew walkout was where
SpaceX
Shane
Endeavour,
Kimbrough.
go for launch.
SpaceX copies, go for launch.
All right, the crew reporting go for launch real time. This just comes right after crew walkout, where Shane Kimbrough, Megan MacArthur, Thomas Pesquet, and Aki Hoshide gave final goodbyes with friends and family gathered outside the operations and checkout building before they began that roughly 20-minute ride out to pad 39A.
And though it was early morning before dawn, we did still get some awesome views of those Teslas heading down the NASA Causeway before the crew arrived at the pad. And once they arrived, they all took a brief moment to enjoy the view of the vehicle that they will be taking flight on. And then they headed up the fixed service structure to begin a process known as crew ingress. That is where the astronauts entered the vehicle, and the SpaceX team performed a series of checks to ensure the suits, seats, and vehicle interactions were all functioning properly.
About 30 minutes ago, the team closed Dragon's hatch with crew safely inside. So now, in, let's see, less than 57 minutes to go until Dragon starts breathing fire, things will pick up as we get close to the go, no-go pole to arm the launch escape system and begin propellant loading.
The crew poll for readiness was completed at T-minus 60 minutes, and we did hear those call-outs. And the Dragon poll for prop load will occur here in just about a minute at T-minus 55 minutes. After that will be T-minus 45 minutes will be the internal mission control Hawthorne poll, and then the launch director's poll for propellant loading. And when we get to about T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract, and the crew will get the call to close their visors and arm the launch escape system. Now, this is the automated system in place that can fire the 8 Super Draco thrusters on Dragon to quickly separate the crew from the rocket, either on the pad or during the flight on the ride uphill.
And then once we reach about T-minus 35 minutes, propellant loading for the Falcon 9 will begin. Throughout the countdown, we've been getting some pretty incredible views of the astronauts you see there on the right, making their final preparations, as well as some close-up views of the suits. The teams have often described the suits as an extension of the Dragon spacecraft, almost a mini spacecraft inside of a spacecraft. So we're hearing that the SpaceX teams are go for launch, and we'll wait for that call for propellant loading. Now, as we wait for that call for the teams to begin propellant loading, we are hearing that there was a weather brief at L-1 hour. We're still looking go for today's launch. Pad escape winds are go. The weather up the ascent corridor is go. Everything tracking as we're inside now, 55 minutes to launch. All right, so again, there are several milestones here now that we're less than an hour away from launch. Most of the calls will be the team's readiness to get ready for propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes. Once we reach that mark, propellant loading will begin. Some of the RP1 refined kerosene will start to fill the tanks of both the Stage 1 and Stage 2 elements of the Falcon 9 rocket. Stage 2 is smaller and expected to fill up just about 20 minutes prior to launch. But RP1 refined kerosene will continue to load into the rocket, as well as liquid oxygen on both the first and second stages, filling up just about 3 minutes before launch for the first stage and 2 minutes before launch for the second. All right, and we are hearing that the Dragon teams did conduct that go poll electronically here in Mission Control Houston. The first checked and the first milestone to go for prop load is underway. There's going to be another poll coming up at T-minus 45 minutes with the launch teams, and then prop load is set to begin at T-minus 35. Until then, let's go over to Jasmine over at the Kennedy Space Center. Jasmine?
Thank you, Gary. Joining me now is NASA's Acting Administrator, Steve Jerzik. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, no, thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. So it's a big day. The Commercial Crew program is in full force. Last summer, we launched Demo 2 and then Crew-1 in the fall, and we're gearing up to launch 4 more astronauts from American soil. How does that feel?
It feels amazing. If you would have told me a year ago that we would get 3 crew flights launched in less than a year, I would have just been ecstatic, and I am ecstatic today for the third flight with SpaceX. It's a lot of firsts with this flight, including the first crew rotation. Having that 4 crew on station in the U.S. segment continuously with the Commercial Crew program transportation capability is going to accelerate the research and technology development we're doing on station, both to benefit folks here on Earth as well as prepare for our Artemis missions.
Right. And with this mission today, we're looking at the space station, but of course, with Artemis, we're going even further to the moon. NASA just announced that they selected SpaceX to develop the first human lunar lander since the Apollo days. What does that mean for our sustained return to the moon?
Yeah, so that kind of completes all the systems we need to develop for the first astronaut landing on the moon under Artemis. So we have the SLS. The core stage test was successful a month ago at Stennis, and so that core stage for SLS for Artemis 1 is on a barge and headed to Kennedy Space Center as you speak. It'll arrive here next week, and that'll mean all the components of SLS are here at Kennedy for integration for the Artemis 1 mission. Orion is ready to go for Artemis 1. The Gateway, we did a review of the Gateway the other day, and the Gateway's starting to come together. And then, of course, the last piece is the Ewing landing system, which will transport astronauts from lunar orbit to the surface and back to lunar orbit. So it's really exciting to have the landing system in full development. It's the last piece that we need for our first Artemis missions. And later this year, hopefully, we'll conduct the first Artemis 1 mission, which will be an uncrewed test flight around the moon.
Right, right. So that is exciting. You know, as we are looking at going to the moon, we're also looking at even further to Mars. We made history just this week with the first flight of Ingenuity. There's also the MOXIE experiment that is converting the Martian atmosphere into oxygen. So what does that mean for our hopeful one day putting people on Mars?
Yeah, so the science missions, the robotic missions are really important because they fill knowledge gaps for us that we need to fill to plan out eventually human missions to Mars. So for example, there's a weather station on Perseverance. And for the first time, we're getting 5-day weather forecasts from Mars, right? So also that weather station characterizes the dust, the size and properties of the dust. And that's really important for mitigating that dust in suits and systems. So it fills knowledge gaps. But MOXIE is really important, right? We generated oxygen from atmospheric CO2, and using the resources of Mars is critical because it'll be very challenging to take all the oxygen and all the fuel and water that we need with us for an astronaut mission to Mars. So getting oxygen from the atmosphere and exploiting the frozen water in the regolith or Martian soil is really important because we can break that water down into oxygen and hydrogen for fuel. We can use it for potable water as well as for breathable air. So this, what we call in situ resource utilization or living off the land, is a real enabler for our human missions to Mars.
Right, right. And of course, we've got our sights set on the moon and Mars, but we're taking care of Earth at the same time. NASA recently joined the White House Climate Task Force. Can you tell us how NASA is going to expand its exploration and understanding of our home planet right here?
Yeah, so we have over about 24 spacecraft in Earth orbit right now, looking down, making observations of the oceans, the atmosphere, the land, vegetation, what we call the cryosphere, or measuring the height of ice sheets, both in the Arctic and Antarctic. So we use the unique view from space to make global measurements over years and decades. And we use that data to conduct research and also to improve models of the Earth systems and modeling, because if we can't predict climate using our research, we can't mitigate climate. And so that's really important that the research we do informs policy making and informs the most effective policies to mitigate climate change, which is really, really important, not only for the US, but for the world. Station, on ISS, we also have instruments mounted externally on ISS. It's in a unique orbit, an inclined orbit that's different from most of our Earth orbiting spacecraft that look down, which are in a polar orbit. And for certain types of instruments, that orbit is very advantageous. It gives us a lot of coverage and a unique perspective. And so we're using ISS more and more as an Earth observation platform. So, you know, both with the research we do with NASA, with our other government agency partners through the U.S. Global Change Research Program, and also in collaboration with our international partners, you know, we're going to continue to make those observations, do that research, and improve our ability to predict climate change.
Right, right. We are making progress across the universe. NASA Acting Administrator Steve Jerzik, thank you so much for joining us today. Now we're going to take it back to John and Hawthorne as action begins to pick up on the pad.
Thanks, Jasmine. It's just inside 46.5 minutes to launch. The SpaceX launch team, they're finishing their final review of data from checkouts of Falcon 9 over the last hour. The launch director is about to poll the team for readiness, both to load propellant and to launch. This will be the last poll before liftoff. The 7 SpaceX engineers indicate they are go by electronically voting on an online countdown procedure. We won't hear a verbal poll, something folks may remember from the earlier days of launch and movies like Apollo 13. The launch director is also checking with Dragon mission director and the NASA launch manager to make sure everyone is ready to go. Meanwhile, on the Dragon spacecraft, on the screen you can see the crew arm is still in the service position. The crew is on board Dragon, waiting for next instructions, which will be to stow the arm for launch and to arm the launch escape system. Once the launch director gives final instructions to the launch team, which should be coming up in about 30 seconds, the crew arm sequence will be armed and initiated. We should get a good view of the Axis arm as it swings away from the capsule, taking about 2 minutes to move out of the way. Now the range continues to be go for launch. They're monitoring the area around the pad as well as air and sea space around the flight corridor. And on the weather front, the weather officer gave a fantastic at the T-1 hour briefing. The winds for all conditions of flight, liftoff, contingencies, getting into space, everything looks good both at ground level and upper altitude. So right now we're just waiting to listen to the SpaceX launch director give the poll and then also give the instructions to the team and move into retracting the crew access arms. So we're going to listen for a minute to the countdown now.
Poll is complete and team is ready for propellant load and crew access arm retract. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief the CE or LD and they'll approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed into launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the countdown, operators shall call hold, hold, hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence. Operators advise launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. In the event of a fire alarm, key operators will remain in their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. Launch control, you may proceed with arming the crew arm for movement.
Crew access arm retraction started.
There you see a live view of the crew access arm retracting away from Crew Dragon in preparation for launch. The countdown clock continues to tick, and we're now at T-minus 42 minutes and 33 seconds. We're standing by for the completion of the crew access retraction. This is one of the last major visual milestones that we'll see in preparation for liftoff. Shortly thereafter, we should hear the call out that the launch escape system is armed, and from there, we'll hear that Falcon 9 prop load has started, which is one of my favorite milestones of the launch countdown.
We just saw a beautiful shot from inside the white room as the crew arm was moving away. There it is. The capsule, you can just barely see it in the corner now of that opening where that is where the side hatch was. Where the astronauts ingress Dragon, and now you can see it continuing to swing away from the Falcon 9 rocket and Crew Dragon Endeavour in preparation for launch. That is a really cool angle. And Tracy, as we're watching the crew arm still retracting here, we are about to have the International Space Station fly over us, right?
We are, yes, here at KSC, Kennedy Space Center. It looks like in another minute to the southeast, traveling across east-northeast. The station should be visible overhead.
Crew access arm retraction complete.
Now we just heard confirmation that the crew access arm is done retracting.
Up next, we'll expect to hear a call to arm the launch escape system.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 7. Close visors and arm launch escape system.
Copy. SpaceX Endeavour visors are down.
Copy, visors down.
Okay, so the crew there reporting that they have closed and locked their visors in place in preparation for the launch escape system arming. safety feature. This is something.
So, good morning. If you are joining us now, because obviously this is the time we were saying we were going live anyway, but we've been live since 9 o'clock this morning, and I've been watching this since 6. I know. Anyway, this is a manned crew mission, which is it's a big one because this goes up to the space station. We have 4 astronauts inside the top. We'll probably get a view of those in a minute. And it's obviously dark at Cape Canaveral at the moment. I'm not sure if it's going to be a lit launch, or sorry, if the sun's going to be up, I mean, because it's coming up to dawn. So at the moment, I think it's about 10 to 6 it's going to take off. So I'm not sure if the sun will be up. Possibly not. Anyway, doesn't matter. It'll be spectacular because it's lit well. So anyway, we'll continue with, if you've got any comments, say hello to us. We are here. We've been here since 9, but it's all right, it's fine. That is a shot of the space station going across Cape Canaveral. Everybody's very excited. Let's just lower my camera down a bit there, that's it. Let's listen to what they're saying anyway, and I'll jump back in, and hopefully we'll have Pete with us or Darren with us in about 10 minutes or so.
Allowed for a wider margin in terms of wind speeds. So there's greater opportunities for launch, but weather not looking like much of a concern at all today. In fact, last we heard there's less than 5% chance of violation, so more than 95% go conditions, which is great.
Yeah. Pretty rare for launches from here.
Yes. And that launch escape system, how that works is, once the fueling begins at T-minus 35 minutes, if there's any kind of emergency, Crew Dragon can launch itself off the top of the Falcon 9 rocket, and then it would splash down under parachutes off the coast in the Atlantic, and we have rescue teams pre-positioned in the event of an emergency. If that happens, which is highly unlikely, but it's something the NASA and SpaceX and Department of Defense teams practice for extensively. That launch escape system is also equipped to perform an abort after liftoff. We would call that an in-flight launch escape, and that can happen at any point throughout the ascent trajectory.
Yeah, we actually tested this launch escape system in multiple ways. We performed a pad abort test where a Dragon capsule was on the pad and simulated an abort where it took off like a rocket like you've never seen and deployed parachutes and splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean. We also conducted an in-flight abort test, which was incredible to witness. I mean, it was a test unlike any other that we'd performed before, and where we launched a Falcon 9 rocket with a Dragon on top, and about 100 seconds into flight, simulated an anomaly. Dragon took off and deployed parachutes, splashed down, and so this is a system that we have tested, but never expect to utilize. Once again, the booster that you're looking at now, if you're wondering why it looks a little dirty, that is actually soot that was left from re-entry after its last mission. This particular booster supported the Crew-1 mission very recently, and we have, there we can see a photo of our Crew-2 astronauts. Actually, they're holding up their fingers because they have soot. They signed their initials, their names into the soot there in the background. So I've said before, I love the human spaceflight traditions that we have, and I think this is a new one. Tracy, you said it earlier.
Yeah. We never got to draw on the shuttle before we launched, so this is kind of cool.
Yeah, Thomas, they were answering questions about it, and he started to say we carved our initials, and he quickly stopped himself. No, we didn't carve anything into the Falcon 9. We traced our initials in the side of the rocket, and so you could see closely in that photo, if you look, you could see the initials of each astronaut. So that's really cool and something that we look forward to seeing on future reused boosters. This one is set to
Propellant
land.
load has started.
Okay, we just heard confirmation that fueling has begun on the Falcon 9 rocket. And this first stage booster is set to land on a SpaceX drone ship at sea after liftoff. We are now at T-minus 34 minutes, 30 seconds and counting from Crew Dragon's third launch with astronauts and the first for 2021. Today begins the next 6-month rotation mission to the International Space Station. The launch escape system is armed, which happened just before fueling began at T-minus 35 minutes. The Dragon capsule was loaded with propellants about a week and a half ago, just a few miles down the road at what we call Dragon Land. And in order to fly, Dragon needs a fuel and an oxidizer. And Kate, I'll let you talk more about the fuel.
Yeah, so for that fuel, we use monomethylhydrazine, or MMH, and nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, for the oxidizer. Together, these two propellants feed the Draco engines that maneuver Dragon on orbit, as well as the 8 Super Draco engines that would power the launch escape system in an abort scenario.
And again, now that the fueling is underway on Falcon 9, that means the 8 Super Draco engines built directly into Crew Dragon are ready, if needed, to launch the capsule off of the Falcon 9 rocket in an instant should there be any kind of emergency associated with the rocket or the launch pad. The NASA and SpaceX teams have trained extensively for exactly that type of contingency, along with the Department of Defense Detachment 3, who does a fantastic job in those training scenarios. Now over to SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne for an operations update. John?
Well, we are counting down those final minutes, and everything's still looking good for Falcon 9 and Dragon for an on-time launch just under 33 minutes from now. Falcon 9 did begin propellant loading just a couple of minutes ago. We heard it. Now, the first and second stages of Falcon 9 are each loaded with 2 liquid propellants. One is fuel. That's loaded into the tank at the bottom of each stage. The other is an oxidizer, and that goes obviously into the tank at the top of each stage. Now, the fuel that we use to power the Merlin engines is a refined kerosene called RP1. And the oxidizer loaded on each stage is densified liquid oxygen called LOX. Densified means that it is kept much colder than typical for launch vehicles, and it takes up less volumes. So this allows us to get more oxidizer loaded onto the first and second stages. Now, to ignite the fuel and oxidizer in the Merlin rocket engine, we use an ignition fluid called T-tub. When T-tub comes in contact with oxygen, it burns, and it gives off a green-colored flame. Now, once we've got the flame going, we add the kerosene fuel into the Merlin chamber, and the engine ramps up to full power. You might see the green flash just as the second stage engine ignites following stage separation. Now, currently, we've just begun. The first stage fuel tank is about right now a little under 10% full. The first stage is the bottom 2/3 of the vehicle you see on your screen. The white cylinder topped off by the black cylinder, that makes up the first stage. And then the top 1/3 underneath the Dragon capsule, that's our second stage. Now at this time, the second stage fuel tank is about 8% full. Now the fuel tank, if you were to zoom in, that's where the NASA meatball logo is positioned. And right above it, you can just make out the red NASA worm logo, and that's where the liquid oxygen tank is on the second stage. And there's a closer view. Now, in addition to loading the fuel, we're also loading oxygen, the liquid oxygen, onto the first stage. We won't start liquid oxygen loading on the second stage until T-minus 16 minutes and 30
Start of
seconds.
stage 1 cryo.
And liquid oxygen will continue loading on both stages until the last few minutes of the countdown. Helium loading into pressure vessels is also underway. We use that to pressurize the tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the Merlin turbopumps. On board the Dragon spacecraft, you can see here in a close-up, the astronauts are monitoring systems while the propellant is loaded into the Falcon 9. The crew training in the simulator included playback of sounds that we've recorded in the Dragon capsule during recent flights. So they get an idea what all that hissing and popping and banging is from the vent valves and the pressurization systems. Now the range continues to report no problems. They are go to support launch. And the weather also looks good. I mentioned the T-minus 1 hour briefing. We called it fantastic. Currently, we don't have anything that we are tracking that could be a concern. We have a very small possibility of a pop-up rain shower, but nothing showing up. So right now, 29 minutes, 40 seconds ago, it looks like we've got good weather. Now, as a reminder, today we have an instantaneous launch window. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity coming in 3 days. So right now, let's turn it back over to Jesse and Gary for an overview of events that are going to happen after the liftoff of Falcon 9.
So, anyway, thanks for joining us if you've just come in. It's about 29 minutes away from launch. This is a crew... sorry, they're speaking in my headphones and I can't hear what I'm saying. So, this is the crew mission, which is going to the space station. Not like any others which set off the satellites or anything like that. This has actually got people inside. Hopefully you've seen them if you've been watching with us for the past hour or so. It's night time at Cape Canaveral. As you can see, it's very dark. It's all lit up. But I've actually physically seen a nighttime launch of the shuttle at Cape Canaveral. And you'll be able to see everything because it's lit up really well. So they're just explaining now on screen about the process of the takeoff, because a lot of people watch these launches who've never watched launches before. So they're just going through everything we already know because we're rocket scientists. We don't know anything. We just like watching rockets go up. I don't know why I have my glasses on, because I've got a massive screen in front of me here. Messages coming in. That's good. Okay, that's fine. Hopefully we'll be joined by Pete or Darren soon. It depends what they're doing, because I'm fully aware that people are at work and they have normal lives, and not like me who works in my office here and I can just jump off and just do this. So 27 minutes to go. Let's listen in to what they're saying on... yeah, they're just talking about how the rocket's going to go up and then land.
To Earth. The first is the entry burn, where 3 of the 9 M1D engines will reignite and then shut down. And this helps to slow the stage down in preparation for entry back into the upper parts of the Earth's
Got new graphics as well, looks like.
While the first stage is heading back to Earth, the second stage will cut off its 1 Merlin engine that was ignited right after stage separation. Once this happens, we'll wait for confirmation of a good orbital insertion.
About 90 seconds after Dragon gets into orbit, Falcon 9 will land back on Earth. The landing burn is just a single engine burn, powerful enough to bring the vehicle's speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship about 9.5 minutes into the mission.
These are nice graphics.
While Falcon 9 first stage is landing, Dragon is preparing to separate from the second stage. At about 3 minutes after the second stage gets into orbit, we should have a great view of Dragon with its 4-person crew drifting away from the second stage. Once Dragon is a short distance away, it will begin checking out its Draco maneuvering thrusters to make sure Dragon continues to increase separation distance from the second stage. It's worth noting that these are not the Super Draco engines that would be used during an abort scenario.
About 40 seconds after separation, Dragon's nose cone deploy sequence will begin. It will take roughly 4 minutes for the nose cone hooks to unlatch and open, exposing its guidance navigation controls, or what we call GNC, that will help Dragon autonomously fly to the space station.
And lastly, once the nose cone is deployed, the remaining Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead will be checked. From there, over the next 23+ hours, Dragon will be in its rendezvous and approach phases, undergoing a number of phasing burns as it makes its way to station. All of that will be coming up soon. For now, let's check back in with Courtney in Mission Control Houston. Courtney.
Thanks, Gary. The space station team here in Houston is focused, and the critical systems on the station continue to function normally. The teams have verified the command path from the ground through our constellation of communication satellites to the station.
I want one of those
Everything is
jackets.
nominal, and the
They all
station
seem to
will
be wearing
ready
those
to receive
jackets.
Dragon tomorrow. Once the crew arrives at the station, they'll join Expedition 65. While on
Douglas got
board, their
my
official designation
SpaceX
will be flight engineers,
launch
except for
shirt on, as
JAXA's
I call
Aki
it.
Hoshide, who will take command of the space station from NASA's Shannon Walker just before Crew 1 comes home. He'll be the station commander until the fall, when he'll hand the reins to European Space Agency Thomas Pesquet for the final part of their mission. Flight Director Paul Kanya is on console now, leading flight controllers in Houston for launch, and Flight Director Scott Stover will lead teams for docking tomorrow. Just a reminder that a launch today will take about 23.5 hours to get to station, with a docking to the Node 2 forward port scheduled tomorrow at 4:10 a.m. Central. Once Dragon is docked to the station, the team here in Houston will assist Dragon and space station astronauts with leak checks, as they will work to open hatches on both Dragon and the inside of the station's pressurized mating adapter. We expect hatch open to take place approximately 2 hours after docking. That's it for us here in Mission Control Houston. I'll send it back over to the team in Florida. Marie?
All right, thanks, Courtney. You are looking live at the Falcon 9 rocket and SpaceX Crew-Dragon, and we can see liquid oxygen venting off the rocket. That is normal and expected. It is now T-minus 23 minutes, 50 seconds.
You don't realise that obviously
counting
not many people
from
watch
the
these
third
launches.
astronaut
And
launch from US soil
I suppose somebody would say,
in the
"Oh, it's on
past
fire."
year, and the first with 2 international partners
So,
aboard.
us
Commander
regulars.
Shane Kimbrough,
I'll say
Pilot
regulars,
Megan
not
MacArthur,
experts.
and mission specialist Thomas
Understand
Pesquet
there's always a lot of smoke going
are
on.
strapped into their seats inside the Crew Dragon Endeavour. On top, there's an
There they are.
inside view. We can see them live as the Falcon 9 rocket fueling operation is well underway now. The launch escape system is armed, and that means the Crew Dragon is prepared to launch itself away from the Falcon 9 rocket in case of an emergency on the pad or after liftoff. So far, operations look and sound as expected, and we are counting down to liftoff at 5:49 Eastern Time.
Might get
This
sun up.
mission is the continuation of rotational crew flights to the International Space Station from U.S. soil on private rockets and spacecraft. This wouldn't have been possible without the success of the NASA SpaceX Demo 2 test flight last year and the safe delivery of the Crew 1 astronauts to the space station last fall for a long-duration mission. Those Crew 1 astronauts are preparing to return to Earth shortly after Crew 2 arrives at station.
And this will be the first time we'll see 2 Crew Dragons docked to the space station at the same time. Crew 1's
That's fairly
Resilience and
spectacular,
Crew
isn't it?
2's Endeavour, that's on the launch pad right now.
With the arrival of the Crew 2 team, I believe that'll bring the head count on station to 11 people. And as much as I love camping, that does sound like it would be a little crowded up there.
Yeah, you know, you counted 11 people on board the station, 9 of them in the U.S. segment. We've got 4 crew quarters, which are basically crew bedrooms. We've got both commanders of the Dragons sleeping in their vehicles. That leaves 3 people needing a place to sleep. That's Suichi, Shannon, and Victor. They'll be in the gym, the Columbus, and the airlock, respectively. So you could say it's quite a full house. They'll be camping out, rolling out their sleeping bags.
It's like when the
on
family
back
come over at Christmas and you just put them up
it'll
in
be,
different
it'll be
rooms.
tight.
What a great benefit to being commander. You have your own private suite.
With windows. And yeah, it's a nice place to be.
Don't forget, if you're watching, drop us a comment.
window
I
shots
can
that we
put you up
have
on screen,
been
or I'll just read
receiving
it
from
out
the
and say
crew
hello
have
to
been
you.
one of my favorite things from the Crew 1 team up there, and even Bob and Doug whenever they were up there as
Bob and
well.
Doug.
Just the view outside of the Crew Dragon window. It's actually my phone background right now. And it's just incredible, and I love that we get
She's
to
just showing
they
off that she's
share
been
their
up.
perspective with us
Definitely.
from above.
Let's give you a quick recap of who
gonna
the
check some stuff
astronauts
here while
are sitting inside the capsule here in the foreground. Sitting closest to the front of your screen is Commander Shane Kimbrough. He is commanding the Crew Dragon Endeavour today, and he is a native of Texas, making his 3rd trip to space. The retired U.S. Army colonel first launched aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour on STS-126, then aboard a Russian Soyuz spacecraft for expeditions 49 and
All
50.
very serious
Kimbrough
photographs.
has spent a total of 189 days in space and performed
I'm just turning my
6
mic up a little bit
spacewalks.
so you can hear.
Pilot Megan MacArthur
There
will
we
be
go.
making her
That's
second
better.
trip to space, but her first to the space station. She was born in Honolulu, but
Load is complete.
She was born in Honolulu, but considers California her home state. MacArthur served as a mission specialist aboard Space Shuttle Atlantis on STS-125, the final servicing mission of the Hubble Space Telescope. She operated the shuttle's robotic arm over the course of 12 days and 21 hours, capturing the telescope and maneuvering the crew members throughout 5 spacewalks.
19 minutes to
the
go.
Telescope's life.
And mission specialist Aki Hoshide is embarking on his 3rd space flight today. The JAXA astronaut from Tokyo previously flew on STS-124 aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery to deliver and install Japan's science laboratory Kibo.
Nice.
He also flew aboard the Russian Soyuz on expeditions 32 and 33 for a 124-day visit to the space station.
And in the far corner of your screen is mission specialist Thomas Pesquet. He will be making his 2nd trip to space. Born in Rouen, France, Pesquet first flew to space on the Russian Soyuz as a flight engineer for expeditions 50 and 51. In that time, he worked on more than 50 different experiments and performed 2 spacewalks with Kimbrough to maintain the space station. He has logged 197 days in space. Pesquet will be the first European to fly in Crew Dragon, and it will be the first time a European astronaut has launched from America in more than a decade.
Wow.
Each of these 4 crew members will join Expedition 65 once they arrive at the International Space Station, with Aki Hoshide taking over as commander of the station right before Crew 1 departs.
And as we're looking at a live view of the pad, again, fueling is underway. We heard a call out during those bio recaps that the RP1 load is complete on the 2nd stage. And we have a really special treat if we could take a view of Bob Behnken's spacesuit. We have that in studio. That is the actual spacesuit worn by Bob Behnken during the Demo 2 test flight. And you can see the photo of his wife, Megan MacArthur, in the photo there. And she is sitting in the same spacecraft, in the same seat that Bob did almost a year ago on the Demo 2 mission. Megan is the pilot for this mission. There's a shot of Bob's spacesuit on the left and Doug Hurley's spacesuit on the right. This was a couple days ago during the pre-launch news conference. So again, looking live at the pad, Falcon 9 will have 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, and we've heard it sounds like a gorilla sitting on your chest. Would you say that's accurate, Tracy?
Yeah. I've never had actually a gorilla on my chest, but I imagine
That's an unusual shot. Where's that from?
One would be that heavy. That the feeling that you have in your chest is pretty significant.
Once again, the white cloud that we see there is expected, totally normal. That's just the liquid oxygen vaporizing essentially as it comes into contact with this humid Florida air. As a point of reference, the liquid oxygen that we load on board Falcon 9 is super chilled to help densify that liquid oxygen. When I say super chilled, I mean really, really cold. We're talking like negative 336 degrees. So, of course, whenever it
that's
comes
quite
into
chilly.
ambient air, it will turn into its gaseous
Stage
state,
2
which
LOX load has started.
Okay, and there we just heard the call out that 2nd stage LOX load has just begun.
And so the mission teams that we've seen in control rooms from Kennedy Space Center to Houston to Hawthorne are all laser focused on keeping this crew safe from this point and all the way to the space station and back home in 6 months. We had a chance to ask about their mindset right now from a couple of their leaders.
Don't forget, if you've got any,
delicate
we'll just mute that a second. If you've got any questions or anything, I know a little bit. I might be able to answer anything. So if you do have any questions over the next half an hour, because it's about 15 minutes to launch, and then we'll be broadcasting for another 15 minutes after that until they get their nose cone open. And then that'll be it for our transmission. We'll probably jump back in for when they connect and dock to the space station, hopefully. And also Monday evening, we've got the spaceship launch, which is happening at 9 o'clock on Monday night. We'll be broadcasting live from about 8:30 time. So make sure you're here for that. We need to nail that launch and landing without exploding on Monday night. So this is 14 minutes to launch. This is the SpaceX Crew launch, which is going to the space station. Let's listen back into NASA and SpaceX.
On a personal level, and have taken such care in all of the checkouts and the paranoia reviews, as they're called, to make sure that they're constantly looking for problems to uncover, to make sure that every leaf, every stone is unturned to make this flight as safe as possible for the crew. Again, it is now T-minus 14 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Liftoff will be about 1 hour before sunrise here on Florida Space Coast, and if we're lucky, we may see a beautiful contrail at first light. At the time of launch at 5:49 and 2 seconds Eastern Time, the space station will be flying 258 miles over the Indian Ocean south of Sri Lanka. And now with T-minus 13 minutes, 50 seconds and counting, we want to focus on the pad as we proceed through the final stretch of the countdown. We will turn it over to Hawthorne to take us through launch at 5:49 this morning. John?
We're inside T-minus 14 minutes. Everything is still looking good for launch of Falcon 9 and Dragon, 49 minutes and 2 seconds after the hour. Falcon 9 began propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Loading of the RP-1 fuel onto stage 2 is complete. Fuel loading is continuing on the first stage. We're over half full, and it'll finish at T-minus 6 minutes. The densified liquid oxygen loading is continuing on the first stage, and we began loading liquid oxygen onto the second stage a few minutes ago. The liquid oxygen loading will wrap up T-minus 3 minutes on the first stage, about T-minus 2 minutes on the second stage. Checkouts of the thrust vector controllers, what we call TVC wiggles, are coming up, along with throttle valve checkouts on the engines. That's where we move the engines a little bit, make sure the hydraulics are ready to go. Currently, the range is go, ready to support, working no issues, and we continue to have good weather both at the launch pad at ground level, at the upper altitude winds, and downrange at the contingency landing sites. On the Dragon spacecraft, the Dragon mission director and team, they're reporting no issues. Their communication checkouts are complete. The crew access arm is retracted, as you see on your monitors, away from the vehicle. The launch escape system is armed. The crew is strapped in and ready to go. Final instructions of the crew will be coming at T-minus 10 minutes. They'll configure their displays for launch. That'll give them insight into how the launch is proceeding, and it provides constant updates on vehicle health. And for Dragon at T-minus 5 minutes, we'll hear it enter terminal count as they transition to internal power. Now we're going to hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to T-minus 0 and to the liftoff. Now, Gary, we talked about the ascent sequence of events that are coming up here. You and Jesse went through that a little while ago, but we're also going to have abort modes. Can you explain a little bit about what the abort mode callouts are that we might hear?
That's right, John. We're continuing to track that the Falcon 9 and Dragon are looking good for launch, but just in case anything were to happen, Dragon is fully prepared to initiate an abort and use those Super Draco engines to escape from a speeding Falcon 9. On the way uphill, you'll hear a series of letter and number combinations. Those will denote the stage that the rocket is on and the abort zone that we're on as well. On the first stage, you'll hear abort zones A and B. That will cover the Falcon 9's ascent up to about the northern border of North Carolina, about 7.5 to 8 miles in altitude. And the stage 2 will have stage 2A through E. Mostly it will be stage A, or stage 2A abort zone, but towards the end of the 6 minutes that stage 2 will be firing, you'll hear the numbers start going out from B to E, with E being an abort to orbit. All of these capabilities enabled on the Dragon spacecraft to make sure that the crew will be delivered safely into orbit. inside 10 minutes and 30 seconds. We should be hearing some final status, maybe a good luck and Godspeed from some of the ground teams here, ensuring that the crew is ready to go. That Falcon 9, Dragon, and all the support teams are ready for launch.
So if you're just joining us, hello. This is SpaceX Crew mission to the space station. 10 minutes to go.
Dragon, SpaceX, confirmed crew displays are configured for launch.
Displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX copies. Shane, Megan, Aki, Tama. We're thrilled to have crew on board Endeavour once again, and truly honored to have you all at the helm. It's been a pleasure training alongside you ahead of this historic launch. We wish you a great mission, good luck, and enjoy the ride.
Thank you, Chad, Christian, Frank, and all the teams who got our crew and vehicle ready for this mission. I want to say a special thank you to our families and friends. We're incredibly grateful for your support and sacrifice during our training and our upcoming flight. Our crew is flying astronauts from NASA, ESA, and JAXA, which hasn't happened in over 20 years. We're excited to represent our nations, agencies, and all of humanity. Off the Earth, for the Earth, Endeavour is ready to go.
All right, some celebratory handshakes from inside the Crew Dragon. That was the voice of the Corps, Chad Healy, here in Mission Control Hawthorne. Next series of events, John, will be the engine chill. Everything's looking good so far.
Yeah, it is. We're actually watching the fuel trim valves on the Merlin 1D engines going through some checkouts right now. And as you said, at T-minus 7 minutes, we're going to start a sequence of events that begins with opening the pre-valves. Currently, the liquid oxygen, the kerosene fuel on the Falcon 9 first, second stages is separated from the Merlin engines. T-minus 7 minutes, just over a minute from now, we open the pre-valves. That allows propellant down to the top of the engine or the inlet to the turbo pumps. At the same time, we open up bleed valves on the turbo pumps, and that allows a little bit of that densified ultra-cold liquid oxygen to flow through the pump and to chill down the liquid oxygen pump. That way, when we get to T-minus 2 seconds and we spin the pumps up and everything comes to full power, we're not pulling very cold liquid oxygen through a warm pump. So as that cools it down right now, that'll get it ready for that ignition sequence in the last couple of seconds. So we should hear that call out that the stage 1 engine chill has started. You'll also hear in flight, about a minute and a half, 2 minutes into flight, MVAC chill has begun. That's also a repeat sequence there where we open the bleed valve and begin chilling that engine one more time before it lights after stage separation. Right now we're waiting to see the pre-valves come open and the chill begin.
Stage 1 engine chill has started.
Yep, and there's the call out. We've got indication pre-valves coming open on the engines. And we have begun to chill in the Merlin engines for flight.
That's right, John. Now inside 6 minutes, 40 seconds. RP1 rocket-grade kerosene is completely filled in the second stage. We're anticipating about 30 more seconds for the first stage to be completely filled with that RP1 refined kerosene. The liquid oxygen will continue to flow through the first and second stages up to the final minutes before T0.
RP load is complete.
All right, confirmation. We have 100%
6 minutes to launch.
RP1 on both the first and second stages. 6 minutes to go until an instantaneous launch window today. The next milestone will be Dragon to transition to configure for terminal count. And this time, terminal count, the Dragon will be on internal power, no longer relying on the lines from the ground. And from there, the Falcon 9 propellant tanks will pressurize for strong back retract. That'll be another visual milestone. The clamps just below the Dragon's unpressurized trunk will open, and the strong back will tilt back just 2 degrees. Then right after liftoff, back to 45 degrees. Again, RP1 kerosene, both on the first and second stages. Liquid oxygen continues to flow through on the first and second stages. That very densified, very cold liquid oxygen.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count.
Falcon 9 propellant tanks are pressurizing
Ooh,
for
we've
strong back retract.
lost video to the Dragon capsule. That's weird.
All right, John, good calls and right on time. Dragon is now on internal power.
Everything's good though. Oh, that's the reason.
Okay, next major event coming up is
Disconnected
going
the
to be
cables.
opening the clamp arms around the second stage in preparation for retracting the strong back away from the vehicle to get ready for liftoff.
Well, we're just going to do a little social media thing to say
We heard the call
launch
out.
is about to
Strong back
happen,
is
so
beginning to retract.
bear with me while I
We're
just do a
into the
little bit of
automated
work.
Sequence. We should see the clamp arms that are just visible there around the top of the second stage begin to open up. Once they are open, then the strong back will begin to move away from the Falcon 9. Watching the sequence, a nice view from up on top of the fixed service structure. The arms are opening. And we're beginning to recline away from the Falcon 9. We'll move the strong back 2 degrees away from the Falcon 9. That'll get it ready for liftoff. And at T0, when the flight computer commands liftoff, the hydraulics on the strong back will pull it to a position 45 degrees away from the Falcon 9, giving it the clearance for launch. So right now, the strong back is moving away. Everything proceeding nominally.
It's great to hear, John. We're also anxiously awaiting the liquid oxygen complete on the first stage. Should hear that call very shortly.
Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Okay, we've heard the call out. Stage 1 LOX load is complete. We're loading liquid oxygen on the second stage for about another 30 seconds or so. Once we get the liquid oxygen load complete on the second stage, the propellant line that runs up the side of the strong back that carries liquid oxygen, we'll vent that line down to make sure there's no liquid in it when we get to liftoff. When we do that, we open up valves on the strong back, and as Kate and Marie were talking earlier, when we vent off that very cold gaseous oxygen, it'll merge with the warm, humid Florida air, and you'll get a large white plume of condensation off of the back of the strong back. That'll be normal, coming about a minute and a half before launch.
Okay, here we go then.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Dragon is in auto idle.
All right, with that, the Falcon 9 is fully fueled. We have fuel on both the first and second stages, and both stages are filled with liquid oxygen.
Gas closeout has started. Expect loud venting.
Dragon is also in auto idle. The flight computer is on Dragon, maintaining their calculations, standing by, waiting for the T0 mark. 1 minute, 15 seconds until launch. The 1 minute mark, Dragon will transition to countdown, and the flight termination system will arm. The computers on Falcon 9 will be talking to the computers on Dragon and can issue an abort if necessary.
FTS is armed. Falcon 9 is in startup and is now controlling.
Dragon is in countdown.
50 seconds to launch.
All right, 50 seconds to go. Everything is ready for an on-time launch today.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
Copy, go for launch.
Ground teams are ready, and the crew inside Dragon is ready. 30 seconds to go until launch.
Seconds.
It's always so nerve-wracking, this bit is.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Sun's not up, though. To deal with that.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. And liftoff. Godspeed, Endeavour and Crew-2.
Copy, 1 Alpha.
Endeavour launches once again. 4 astronauts from 3 countries on Crew-2, now making their way to the one and only International Space Station. The vehicle is pitching downrange. 9 Merlin engines on the first stage, providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Hearing good calls on first stage performance so far.
Look at that picture.
We are T plus 30 seconds into the second rotational crew mission on board Dragon and Falcon 9. Falcon 9 will be throttling down the 9 Merlin engines shortly here in preparation for maximum dynamic pressure. And there's that call out for the throttle down. Maximum dynamic pressure, or max Q, is the largest structural load that the vehicle sees throughout ascent. So throttling down does help us pass. Throttling down helps us pass through this period, which should be coming here shortly.
Max Q.
There's that call out that we have just passed through max Q.
Stage 1, throttle up.
And
1 Bravo.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
All right, 1 Bravo is the second abort mode on the first stage. The first stage continues to fire for 2 minutes, 35 seconds. 1.5 minutes into today's flight.
I always like listening to this in my headphones because it sounds awesome.
Falcon 9 now traveling at 1,500 miles an hour.
And the engine chill has started.
All right, the engine chill for the second stage single Merlin engine has started. About 30 more seconds of the first stage firing to bring our 4 astronauts into orbit.
Now from here, coming up in about 20-some seconds, we're going to have 3 major milestones. We'll have shutdown of the 9 Merlin engines. We're beginning to throttle them down. We will then get stage separation.
1, throttle down.
And then we will get ignition of the second stage engine to propel Dragon and the Falcon 9 second stage into orbit.
Two
Alpha.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
Confirmed.
Acquisition signal right.
And ignition.
And we have ignition of the second stage. You see the green flash of that TTEB fluid.
So the first stage is on the left-hand side. That's coming back down to land now.
The second stage Merlin vacuum glowing that bright red that we like to see. Good performance on the second stage so far.
And on the left side of your screen, we saw the exhaust of the second stage engine streaming past the first stage as the grid fins are coming out. We also briefly had a view of the lights of Central Florida in background. Currently, the first stage is continuing to coast up to apogee. It's unpowered. It'll reach a peak height and then begin to descend back down toward the Earth's atmosphere, where it will light 3 engines to slow down in preparation for what will be a landing burn on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. You can see the grid fins are deployed right now. The first stage
Dragon,
pulsing.
SpaceX, trajectory nominal.
We're pulsing the thrusters.
Signal of Bermuda.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
And we hear a call out from the crew, nominal trajectory. So we're beginning to move the first stage into position so it can do the entry burn.
Four minutes, 15 seconds into today's flight. Second stage propelling our 4 astronauts up the eastern seaboard will continue to fire. It's a 6-minute burn to deliver the astronauts into orbit. We'll wait for a cue for good orbital insertion after that. Meanwhile, we will be hearing check-ins on the vehicle's trajectory and performance, as well as check-ins with some of the ground stations as it passes over throughout the 6 minutes of the second stage firing.
There's a lot of debris coming off the first stage, which is looking
Dragon SpaceX
spectacular.
trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
It looks like it's underwater, doesn't it?
Getting good views of both the first and second stage from the onboard cameras.
Acquisition of signal, boss.
The New Hampshire tracking station has acquired the second stage telemetry signal. Meanwhile, the first stage has reached apogee and it's now beginning to descend from a height. It's currently about 167 kilometers up. And in a few minutes, we will get the entry burn of the second stage, of the first stage.
Get it right. It's your job.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Right on cue, those check-ins on the second stage performance. Once a minute, everything's looking good on that second stage.
Propulsion is nominal.
Stage 2 continues to climb. The vehicle now exceeding 8,000 miles an hour at an altitude of about 124 miles.
And just about 1 minute from now, we will begin the entry burn of the first stage. That'll consist of lighting the center engine, and then shortly afterwards, 2 more engines for a 3-engine burn to slow down the first stage in preparation for entering the Earth's atmosphere.
Dragon SpaceX trajectory nominal.
Copy, nominal trajectory.
Another check-in, and the crew confirming they're hearing the same thing. The vehicle exceeding, are about to exceed about 10,000 miles per hour.
Phenomenal.
Meanwhile, first stage down at 90 kilometers, getting ready to relight 3 engines for the entry burn.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Yes, it is live.
We've got the center engine ignition, and there come the 2 side engines.
Matt's
Now this entry burn
Matt's
will last
asking if
about
it's live. It
29
is
seconds.
live.
It's going to significantly slow down the vehicle in preparation for hitting the denser part of the Earth's atmosphere. Entry burn complete. We're down below 35 kilometers, continuing to look good on the first stage, heading to the Atlantic Ocean for a landing on the drone ship.
So obviously the first stage, the sun's coming up now, isn't
Second
it?
stage is less than a minute away from cutoff.
Second stage is now getting the sun hitting the engine as well.
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
That's pitch on stage 1 is great.
Shannon.
Copy, Shannon.
Shannon called out at the back end of the stage 2, a few seconds until cutoff.
They've lost the video on stage 1.
Back shutdown.
Keeps popping back up.
Dragon SpaceX launch escape system disarmed.
Launch escape system disarmed. Copy.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbit insertion.
Copy, nominal orbital insertion.
All right, the Falcon 9 second stage has done its job, delivering our 4 crew into orbit.
You hear the applause here on Hawthorne. We're waiting to get a video signal back from the drone ship. Of course, I still love you. And the view from the onboard camera, we saw it just briefly. It looks like first stage on the drone ship. Getting views of the Dragon trunk. So the first stage is on the drone ship, successfully landed. And more importantly, second stage is in a nominal orbit with the Dragon spacecraft getting ready for some important events coming up, Gary.
That's right. About 2 more minutes. The Dragon and the second stage of the Falcon 9 will be in a coast phase. It'll take that long until the spacecraft separates from the Falcon 9. Of course, both now in a nominal orbit. It's great to see some of the views of the Earth as it passes by over the North Atlantic Ocean.
There's a view of the crew.
All right, we're getting shots of the crew in orbit. I'm looking for that 0G indicator. Can't seem to see it in this shot, but we have a minute to go until we have spacecraft separation.
You can see the 0G. There's some of the materials just floating
Dragon
around.
traveling at nearly 17,000 miles per hour at an altitude of 124 miles. Again, the 4-person crew of Endeavour is in orbit right now. Less than 30 seconds until we have spacecraft separation. Ten seconds to spacecraft separation. We should hear words from the core here in Mission Control Hawthorne once we have successful separation.
Nice.
Dragon separation control.
Dragon, SpaceX, Falcon team wishes you a great rest of your trip. Say hi to the crew of Dragon Resilience from us and let them know your rocket is home safe. Thanks for flying our first flight-proven, crewed Falcon 9. See you airside, Crew-2.
Thank you very much. We're great. It's glad to be back in space for all of us, and we'll send our regards to Crew 1 when we get there. Thanks.
Oh, the baby's back.
Absolutely stunning views from both inside the cabin, seeing the excitement of our 4-person crew inside Endeavour, and watching Endeavour drift away from the camera on the second stage as the Earth passes by on an orbital sunrise.
SpaceX Endeavour week.
And Endeavour, you cut out a little bit there. If the question was if you're go to open visors, you are go to open visors at this time.
Copy and work. Thanks.
All right, 13 and a half minutes past liftoff. The crew is in orbit, traveling at nearly 17,000 miles an hour.
Well, Gary, I don't know about you, but that was a great countdown. Everything sounded great. Right on time,
Dragon,
actually a
SpaceX,
little
we
ahead
see
of
a
time.
nominal dehumidifier activation and service section Draco checkouts.
Got a good orbit out of Falcon 9, and first stage landed on the drone ship. And we're in the sunlight over the Atlantic Ocean with the Dragon spacecraft. All in all, a great day.
I think everybody's jealous of the crew in orbit right now, John. These views, even just from the cameras, are absolutely stunning. It was great to see our crew members get into orbit. They already performed successful checkouts of
So that's it. They're up and going to coast. It takes 23 hours to get to the space station. I don't know why. It just literally went over them an hour ago. So it obviously has to prepare and the speed match and all that. So we're going to end the broadcast here because it's basically just watching them float around for the next 23 hours, and we don't want to do that. So we'll be back. We'll start transmitting different parts over the next few days, over the next 23 hours as they get close to the space station, and hopefully they'll connect with the space station. That's the idea. That's what they're going to do. Not hopefully, that's what they want to do. So you'll get notifications if you follow us on any of the channels. You'll get notifications of when we go live, which is great. So the next plans, let me just double check, because our next live broadcast, which is for the Starship launch, is supposed to be for Monday. So let me just see if that is all still correct, because that does change. As you probably know, if you do follow us on any of our channels, that we put the launch out and then we keep changing it, especially with the Starship, because let's have a look. It's still scheduled for Monday, which is good, and it's still for a 9 p.m. launch. We'll be live at about 8:30 on Monday night. That's UK time, and we'll be broadcasting the live test launch of Starship, and hopefully, well, it needs to nail it. It really does need to nail it. It's got to launch, do the belly flop, straighten up, and land. That's what we need. So that's on Monday. Hopefully, as you say, if you do follow us on any of the channels, follow our YouTube channel, Social Command, and you'll get notified of all the live launches. That is it. Thanks very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to watch together the launch of the SpaceX Crew mission, and they've just lost signal. Good time to leave, probably. So we will see you very soon, and we'll see you on Monday for the Starship launch.
Over the next 23 hours, we'll bring you through some of those major burns that are happening. But I am so jealous of Marie and the group over there over at the Kennedy Space Center. You actually got to see the launch and probably feel it as well. Marie, what was that like?
T-minus 10, 9,
it was
8, 7, 6,